Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we are going to talk about falling inflation and the terrible economics media. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit interesting this week, which is we are filming this on Monday, the 13th of May. We're going to put it out this Sunday, which will be the 19th of May. And so if you're watching this on the Sunday, this coming Wednesday, which will be the 22nd of May, UK inflation data will come out. And I can tell you now with a very high degree of confidence that it will be reported in all the media, UK inflation is falling. And we're going to talk today about how I can tell you that with so much confidence. We're going to explain to you how I know in advance that UK inflation will fall on Wednesday. And we're going to explain to you how you can do that yourself. The reason is because the economic number which is constantly used in the media for inflation is 1 year CPI. CPI stands for Consumer Price Inflation or Consumer Price Index. And when we look into that 1 year, we have 12 months. And the inflation in the last year is basically the sum of the last 12 months. So I'm going to show you now the last 12 individual months of inflation. So I'll bring them up here. So these are the last 12 months of inflation. You can see April 23 was 1.2%, May 2023 was 0.7%, and then we've got a lot of numbers. Some of them are negative, some of them are positive, but they're a lot closer to zero. This is the last 12 months of inflation. At every point, yearly inflation is the last 12 months of inflation. When a new number comes out, so the number which is coming out this week is the April 2024 inflation, then we will stop counting the April 2023 inflation. So that very high bar at the top will drop out and we'll get a new bar coming in. So I think this is the first thing which you need to understand to figure out how we can predict changes in yearly inflation, which is that yearly inflation is always the sum of the last 12 months of monthly inflation. Now, this Wednesday, we'll get the April figure. We don't know at this point what the April 2024 figure will be. But we do know what the April 2023 number is, which will be dropping out of the calculation. That is this number here, which is 1.2%, which is really high. 1.2% monthly inflation. If you want to turn that into a yearly inflation, you have to times it by 12, or actually you have to do a little bit more than that. But it works out at approximately 14 to 15% yearly inflation. So last April, inflation was really, really high. When this April's number comes out on Wednesday, we will stop counting last April's number. So straight away, unless the April number for this year is really, really high, because the number which we're no longer counting was really, really high, we know straight away that the yearly number will fall. That is how I can tell you with a great degree of confidence now, when the number comes out on Wednesday, yearly inflation will officially fall and all of the media will say, fantastic, inflation is falling, and all of the conservative politicians will be super happy. Now, when you think about it, this is in a way kind of stupid. Right? If we know already now that inflation is going to fall on Wednesday, why should we be happy? Why should we celebrate when Wednesday happens? If Wednesday was important new information, then we should have to wait till Wednesday to be happy. But we already know it's going to be good. The reason is because, quite simply, the period of high inflation is no longer in the most recent year as of this Wednesday. So really, it's a technical thing, right? We only look at the last 12 months, and increasingly, if you have, as we had, a one-off big spike in inflation, as time passes, that massive inflation is increasingly no longer in the most recent year. So as the inflation falls out of the last year, we see our inflation normalize. To celebrate that is essentially celebrating the passage of time. We're simply celebrating the fact that the mass inflation we had is no longer in the most recent 12 months. So a few things to clear up here, right? As inflation is falling towards target, first thing is to make really clear, we've said it before, but it's important that you realise, inflation falling down closer to 2% does not mean that prices are coming back down. Inflation is the rate of increase of prices. So even though inflation will come down closer to 2% next month, that doesn't mean that prices are normalizing. It simply means that they're not going up that quickly anymore. Your life will not get better. Your groceries will not get cheaper. It simply means they're no longer going up at a rapid rate. Second question, and we've covered this before, should the Conservative government, should Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt be given credit for this? Now, those of you who've been watching the channel for a while will remember in January 2023, I put out a video about Rishi Sunak's inflation pledge. The reason I did that was this. So if I show you the longer term monthly inflation, so here you see 5 years of monthly inflations. I put that video out in January 23, which is about here. You could already see at this point that we'd moved past the period of very high inflation. And over time, the very high months of inflation would gradually fall out of the statistics. So at the beginning of Jan 23, it was already very clear to basically everyone in economics that inflation was going to start falling, probably pretty quickly, at least the official yearly figure of inflation. And I considered at the time doing a video predicting inflation would fall, because I thought, well, we can make a prediction, it will definitely be right, it's an easy prediction to be made, we kind of get some credibility for predicting a thing in advance. And I chose in the end not to make that video because I felt that it was quite cheap of me to try to claim credit for predicting something which basically at the time everybody in economics knew would happen. So I decided not to make the video predicting inflation would fall. And then Rishi Sunak came out and said, I will pledge to reduce inflation over the coming year, which I thought was quite hilarious because, you know, I decided not to make a prediction inflation would fall because it was so obvious that it would fall. And then Rishi Sunak came out and not only did he predict inflation would fall, he claimed credit in advance for the fact that inflation would fall, despite the fact that it was very obvious at the time that inflation was going to fall, quite simply because over time the inflation would no longer be counted in the previous year. It's a little bit like if Rishi Sunak punched you in the face and then saw you with a big black eye and said, I will pledge to reduce the swelling in your eye over the next 2 weeks, because this is what happens with the passage of time. In the passage of time, things that happened recently stop being in the last year and swellings go down over time. This is simply claiming credit for things that happen over time. But I don't want to dwell on this too much because the point I want to make here is largely that the reporting of economic events is often misleading. You will be told on Wednesday, inflation has fallen. Whereas in reality, that inflation fall happened 1 year ago. Very little new information will be received on Wednesday, most likely. It could be we get an unusually high or low print. Probably the monthly print will be about 0.5, 0.6. And the reason that inflation will fall on Wednesday is not because of anything that happened on Wednesday, it's because of something that happened last April. And I think the lesson that we can learn from this is not to get lost in the political football of economic reporting. On this Wednesday, you'll be told inflation is falling, the Conservatives will take credit for it, Labour will say, well, if you take credit for the fall, then you should take blame for the rise. And actually, the reality is, both of these stories are in a way dishonest. The fact that inflation has fallen is not thanks to the Conservative government. And in large part, the fact that inflation rose was not the fault of the Conservative government. I do think there was a little thing that happened around the ridiculous Liz Truss mini budget, which added to inflation. But I'm going to show you now graphs of inflation in a number of other countries across the world. So we'll show you the last 5 years of inflation in the USA. We'll show you the last 5 years of inflation in Italy. We'll show you the last 5 years of inflation in Germany. What you can see here is that basically the same thing happened in pretty much every country in the world in the last 5 years, which is inflation spiked one off massively and then it started to come down over time. This happened in pretty much every country. And if something happens in every country, what that tells you is this is not to do with the specific policies of the specific governments in those countries. This is an international problem which is happening in a number of countries. And this is a big trend in economics media, which is economics media basically wants to sell you on the kind of Coronation Street, EastEnders, soap opera politics of economics, which is everything good that happens is thanks to the current government, everything bad that happens is because of the current government, and they want to attach specific problems to specific faces, specific names. Whereas the truth is, a big thing has happened in the last 5-10 years in basically every rich country in the world, which is that inflation increased massively. It came down again. Inequality increased massively. Living standards decreased massively. And this happened in basically every country in the world. When I think of this, I'm really reminded of the house price crisis, so I live in London. A lot of people in London think the house price crisis is because of London planning policy. A lot of people blame it on Sadiq Khan. I worked in finance for a long time, which is very international. And when I worked in finance, I met people from all over the world. And what I found is that everyone in New York thinks that the New York house price crisis is because of New York planning policy. Everyone in Sydney thinks it's because of Sydney planning policy. Everyone in Toronto and Vancouver think it's because of their planning policy. Everyone in Dublin thinks it's because of their planning policy. Everyone in Shanghai and Tokyo and Hong Kong and Rio de Janeiro and Paris and Barcelona, all of these people think that the global housing price crisis is because of their specific policy. And the inflation crisis in the UK is similarly being blamed on UK-specific policy, when really what is happening is a much bigger thing, which is that living standards are falling all across the world. Inequality is rising all across the world. The rich are getting richer all across the world, and ordinary working people are suffering all across the world. Okay, so I think we can learn a couple of lessons here from this obsession with the media, with small details and individual faces and personalities of individual politicians while living standards collapse. Number one, the problem is not UK specific. So I am British, and I know most of our viewers are British, but we get watched all over the world. We often get messages on the channel which is saying, Gary, you're right, Britain is totally messed up. What can I do? Where can I leave to? And I think this is actually a really worrying approach to a global problem, because we also have viewers from all over the world, viewers from even countries which are generally considered to have stronger economies, places like Australia, places like New Zealand, places like the USA. And these people invariably say, things are just as bad here, things are getting worse here, living standards are getting worse here, what can I do, where can I leave to? And what you have is a global problem of the global super rich dispossessing Western middle classes, and every single person in the world is saying, this is because of my specific country, I'm going to leave. And if everybody focuses on trying to run away from the rich and nobody focuses on fighting the rich, then basically we're all going to lose. So I'm very aware that we have, a variety of UK-specific problems, and those of you who are not in the UK, I'm sure you'll be aware you have country-specific problems in your country as well. But there's a big global shift in power and in wealth away from middle classes towards the rich. And if you don't fight it, then you will lose everything. The second lesson that we learn from this, I think, is to be wary of getting too much involved in economics as political football. So we're here in the UK, we're going to get an election this year. Almost certainly we'll get a change in government, we'll get a new political party coming in. A lot of people will be optimistic about that, but the truth is, this new political party is not realistically serious about reducing wealth inequality. If they don't reduce wealth inequality, then they will not be able to stop the fall in living standards. We have many countries across the world which have left or centre-left governments. We have Germany, we have Spain, we have arguably the USA. I know some people will say that their government is not that centre-left. What you see here is a variety of different governments, centre-left, centre-right governments. In every case, living standards have collapsed in the last 5 years because they are not doing anything about wealth inequality. Elections will be held in different countries, governments will change. At the moment, we do not have any serious, powerful political party promising to do anything about wealth inequality. And that is because ordinary people are being given this kind of nonsense economics media, which is like, things are getting better, don't worry, stick around, don't rock the boat, inflation's getting better and things will improve. Do not be fooled by economic media that focus on throwing statistics at you while your life gets worse and worse. There is a structural problem of growing inequality, and neither centre-right nor centre-left parties across the world are serious about changing it. They're funded by very rich people who don't want you to tax them more. Unfortunately, the only way to stop your life from getting worse is to tax them more. Otherwise, they will get richer and richer and they will take your assets. So I think, to conclude, We will see this week officially a fall in inflation. It will do nothing to make your life better. It's extremely predictable in advance, which tells you very clearly that there is no new news coming in. It will be sold to you as new, it will be sold to you as exciting. Don't buy it, don't believe it. The structural problem is continuing to worsen. Wealth inequality gets worse and worse. Living standards continue to fall. Political parties who are funded by, and in many cases run by, wealthy people are refusing to do anything about it. The only way to make things better is to tax the rich more, tax ordinary working people less. That way we can get wealth flowing the other direction. We can make housing affordable, we can make your life better. But the politicians won't listen to me unless you guys support me. So keep promoting our stuff. Send this video to your friends, to your family, to your mum. Let's tax the rich. Let's get wealth back in the hands of working people. Thank you.